All right, this is the Committee of the Whole. This is Monday, January 28, 2019. We're at 6 p.m. Jump up. Somebody jump up there at 6. There's Rich. All right. We have Council Capone. We have Council Della Sola. We have Council Florio. We have Council DePiero.
Here.
We have Council Heelan. We have Council Marchese.
Here.
We have Council Matusky. We have Council McKinnon. We have Council Napolitano.
Here.
We have Council Simonelli. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Stand up, salute the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On a side note, Council McLaughlin had a doctor's appointment. He could not make this committee meeting.
All right. We have a resolution up by Council Frank Capone that a representative of IST Code Enforcement appeared to discuss the state-authorized inspections on multifamily homes in the city of Everett.
Council Capone?
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could have somebody from ISD and someone from the, I believe we have an Assistant City Solicitor forward, that'd be great.
Just please state your name.
Good evening,
Your
members of the
department.
council. Keith Slattery, Assistant City Solicitor, and I'm also Chairman of the Code Enforcement Task Force.
Thank you.
Frank Nuzzo, Director of Code Enforcement.
Thank you. Council Capone?
Thank you, Mr. President. As you gentlemen are aware, the state allows for inspections of multifamily properties. I think it's 3 or more, but it's news to a lot of people. So they don't find out about it for the first time when they get a letter. I figured it was probably a good thing to have you up here, explain the process, how it all happens, what you're looking for, the authority that's provided for, et cetera. So either one of you who wants to take it, if you could just give an overview, that'd be great.
I will yield to Keith, who's done a lot of the homework on this item, and it would be unfair for me to steal his thunder here.
So in late September or October of last year, early October, we started an initiative to streamline these, what they call 110 inspections. So 780 CMR 110 is the building codes portion that, as Councilor Capone said, is a mandatory periodic inspection of all 3 families and above for issues of safety. Just to reiterate so everyone knows what they are, it's generally exterior porches, egress doors and hardware, stairways, handrails, smokes and carbon detectors, emergency lights and exits in these multifamily and multi-dwelling apartment houses, fire extinguishers, common areas, making sure that contact information is visible in the vestibule or the porch, interior public areas such as corridors, laundry rooms, or utility enclosures, and exterior features such as balconies, decks, and cooking and grilling areas. The benefits to inspections such as these is an increased level of safety, obviously, for the occupants, compliance with critical life safety systems, and it also satisfies the mandated code for these inspections. So all municipalities actually generally carry these out. Some municipalities have them written in their code. Others, like the city of Everett, has a procedure in which we have a coordinator, which is Jennifer Gonzalez, and we basically go street by street or grid by grid, and we send out letters asking people to participate in this program. Although it's mandatory, it has been 100% voluntary so far. We've received 0 complaints, and as a matter of fact, people are grateful that they're being educated on the code. We do charge a $75 fee. The state actually allows us to charge a fee. This is the lowest allowable, and it's one of the lowest I've seen from other cities. But when the people get the letter, they generally call us, and at their leisure, within a certain time window, we give them a month, we give them 2-hour windows, 4-hour windows. The landowner is to meet us at the house at the time of their choosing, and we walk through these areas with the homeowner or the landlord or the building owner. Sometimes it is a management company. You are allowed under the code to have an agent there with you. At the time of the inspection, issues are pointed out. Obviously, the building code has various components that have 24-hour issues like smokes and carbons, 7-day issues like handrails, and then 30-day issues, which would be fire extinguishers and so forth and so on. So those, we work collaboratively with the homeowner, and after we get it completed, they get a certificate saying that they've passed, and they don't have to be inspected for the term of 5 years. 5 years is the term that the city abides by, and that's in the code, so.
Okay. And thank you for that overview.
Sure.
And one of the questions I had, and you kind of answered it, was how do the properties get selected? Is it random? But it looks like you kind of grab a section of the city and go by a grid or go street by street and then
Right.
just try to go from there. Typically, how many do you think or you hope that you can get done in a year?
So the coordination's been pretty good. We get about 10 done a week, and that number basically fits what the populace is for buildings that fall into this category. So I actually didn't bring the numbers with me, but I think it's 1,700 buildings that would fit into this category. So
Okay.
within 5-year period, if you can get about 8 to 10 done a week, you'll be able to cover all of the buildings that would fall under the code.
Okay. And one of the other things you had mentioned is they get a letter, tells them they need to comply, and some folks think it's voluntary, but it's really not. It's mandatory. What happens if the homeowner gets the letter and says, well, I'm not going to make a phone call? What happens from there?
We haven't run into anyone that's objected to us. We do have some properties we haven't been able to get into yet. And so, since we're doing 10 a week, and they're, I wouldn't say at random, but we are going grid by grid. We keep a list. Ms. Gonzalez is doing an excellent job of keeping that list and where we need to go. But since we're doing 10 a week, and we've got months of these scheduled out with people that comply, that hasn't become a real issue yet. Of course, we do follow up with letters, and then we do follow up with a certified letter on a third request. And we haven't even, since we started these in October, we haven't even come to a situation where we're 90 days out, and it would be a process where we might need to go get a court order or something like that. We have not run into that yet because we're really early in the stages of this.
Good. And I saw something which was an application form. Does the homeowner have to fill out an application for the inspection, or does the phone call do it?
No, the application's necessary. We get an application and a check before we go out and do the inspection.
Okay. And the part that's kind of confusing is it has that they're applying for an inspection, which makes it look, please come to my house. I'm sure a lot of folks are like, if you don't come, that's fine. But, so they do have to fill out an application. They do have to pay the application fee. I'm sure that if they don't, it goes through progressive steps.
It would.
And eventually will become a problem for them. So it's better to comply and just get everything taken care of. And then the other question I have is with regards to violations, minor ones probably not so much, but maybe get into bigger ones. Is there anything that's grandfathered in here? Or is it you come across a violation, the homeowner has to fix it?
Sure. So if, let's say you have a 4-unit building and the detectors aren't hardwired, then you could keep those as battery operated. That, of course, then dictates several other terms. Like if you added a bedroom, then you must hardwire under the code. But the inspectors that go out note all of this.
Okay.
And I have not received any problems of compliance.
Okay.
Usually, there's a couple of small things that need to be taken care of. Usually, the detectives are taken care of that day, which is the most important thing.
One thing that someone had called to my attention, and I don't know exactly what happened, but an individual was saying that there was an entry door, and that they didn't replace the entry door. That's how they purchased it, but they were being told that they needed to change the entry door. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm interested in. Is that something that's grandfathered in, or because it's an entryway, it's not?
Fire-rated doors are not grandfathered.
Okay.
So all doors need to be fire-rated. That might have been the situation that you ran into. And we have, you can use the word ordered, but we're there with the landlords. The inspectors are out with the landlords. It's been by agreement. That's one of the examples of somebody was really grateful to understand that they didn't have a fire-rated door, so.
Okay. So if you could just address maybe some of the, not really minuscule, but some of the stuff that would be grandfathered in, even just a couple of examples. I think you mentioned the
Stairway width.
hardwired, that would be grandfathered in, that if it were an issue, they don't have to worry too much about it.
Sure, stairway width, obviously, if you've got an existing house that you haven't altered,
Yeah.
the railings, railing height, banisters and beams. There might be headspace issues in certain places like laundry rooms and so forth and so on. those are things you wouldn't have to worry about. Again, we're mainly interested in safety of first responders, safety of the occupants, and it's egress, it's being alerted of a danger in the house, whether it be carbon monoxide or fire, and then having a safe way out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the information. I thought it would be a good way to address it, get it out to the general public, let them know about it before they get the letter, because you can imagine the shock that comes when you receive a letter
Sure.
talking about inspection. So thank you for addressing those points. If it's possible, could you get a copy of that code to our aide, and then that way the aide could distribute it to the members, and they'll understand where the authority comes from in case they're asked a question
Mike.
by a homeowner or anything of that nature.
Sure, sure.
So I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank
I
you.
don't have any other questions.
Council Napolitano.
Thank you. Now, when these letters go out, do they break down what what is going to be looked at?
Yep, the letter, I didn't bring the letter, I just brought the application. The things that I had noted that we'd be looking for are all examples of things in the letter that we'll be looking for, and we do, actually in the letter ask that if they get a chance, inspect them themselves, and for ease of inspection, they know where they are. So they'll know where their carbons are, they'll know where their smokes are, they'll understand basic egress maintenance and so forth and so on. That's all outlined in the letter.
And this is an inspection of only the common areas?
Well, we're with the landlord. Sometimes they actually ask us to look at other things, but it's not common areas because if you're looking for smoke detectors and you're looking for carbons, you're in the unit. And there might be stairways in units and so forth and so on. And plus, we do have to check the doors for fire rating. So fire rating is important because if there's a fire in one apartment or one unit or one bedroom, these fire-rated doors actually retard the fire, make sure that they stay put as long as possible so other areas of the building aren't affected as quickly.
And how prevalent do you find that in like a three-family house?
How prevalent do we find?
Fire doors?
Well, they're fire-rated, so it's just a density. You know how some doors are like styrofoam, paper thin?
Right.
Solid, like the solid wood doors.
We've only found 2 or 3 violations of fire doors, and they're the ones that enter the apartment. So someone will have a closet door, an exterior door as their apartment door, and that's really what we're looking for. So.
And I thought you mentioned also emergency lighting?
Yep, emergency lighting. Some of the buildings that are 4 units, let's say, and above, have corridors, and you're required to have emergency lighting to let everyone know where the exit stairways are and the exits.
Most of the calls I've gotten were from people like myself who own 3 families and,
Right.
and reside in them.
Have we been to your house yet?
Not for this, no, but I also don't have emergency lighting. That's the first I've heard of
That's
that.
not necessary in a 3-family house.
Those are my concerns,
Right.
because again, are they going to know when they get the letter what they have to adhere to in case there's something that they need to address prior to scheduling an appointment?
So any members of ISD and Ms. Gonzalez will always take a phone call, too, and we do get phone calls generally. In a large percentage of the time when someone gets this letter, we do get phone calls and it's explained to them, or they'll come in and they'll have a blank check and they're ready to discuss it and then start the transaction. So, but we're always available for these questions.
All right, very good, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a lot of questions, but most of them have been asked and answered, so thank you, guys. But anyway, when you give a notice that you're going into someone's property to inspect it, I want to try to find out, like, what the timeline is. You send them a notice first, then you go in to inspect?
Right, they make an appointment, so we try to work
okay,
around their
okay.
schedule because under the code, the homeowner's required to be there.
Okay.
Sometimes they have an agent.
Okay, and then if it's okay, you sort of like release it, saying that this is done? Oh, this house has passed everything?
Yes, so they get a certificate,
Okay.
and that certificate's mounted.
And if there's a problem, you go back and inspect that area?
Mhm.
Do you give them a record that it's been done, something that they can keep and say, okay, it's all been done and it's all fixed up and everything? They get
Yes.
to pass?
Yes.
And how long does all of that take, from the beginning to the end?
Some take a half hour and everyone's done.
No, I mean the whole thing, from start to fixing it, to saying it's okay, and
So
Like-
we've got a couple that we're still working on.
so it takes, could be a month, or it could be longer or shorter?
Yeah, it could be several, could be several months.
Several months, okay.
Because we're trying to work with people, so.
Okay.
I mean, not everyone has the easiest
I
schedule.
only need this in case someone calls me and asks me, you know.
Okay.
Okay, answered. Okay, now, this is a state-mandated law?
Yes,
we
it's
have
in the
to go
building
by?
code.
Now, usually, my dealings, when they had it state-mandated laws, the state paid for it. Did the state pay for any of this?
So what I've given you is just for my note purposes, the actual inspection clause. There's other clauses related to that which talk about cost of application. That's in the building code. So I can get everyone every related part of the code that they need. That was just my basic, this is where you find it. And then there's footnotes in what I've passed out, and that has, yes, they actually do instruct us to charge a fee.
Okay.
So.
So that was done. 5 years. And how long have we, as a city, been doing this kind of a inspection?
So
How
there-
long has this mandate been in law, I guess?
Well, I'd be remiss to say, I think 1974 was the earliest code that I've read it in. It could have been in prior to. There's never any reason to refer back before 1974, for at least my purposes. I would have to get that information.
Does
But
it get updated all the time?
It does. The
It does.
last code was, forgive me, 3 years ago. And what is this, 19? So 16. But we, as a city, have always done them, although now we've tightened up the program to make sure we can, get to every house within 5 years, or as reasonably close to that as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Marchese.
Hi, Attorney Slavy.
Hi.
How many people usually show up to do an inspection?
So it's two inspectors, so they have a way of inspecting, much like the fire department does. The
Yep.
fire department goes by A wall, B wall,
Yep.
C wall, D wall. So one will go through and one will take notes. Then there's a
Yep.
building inspector and a representative of the fire department or the fire safety unit.
So when they send in like 20 people, what kind of inspection is that?
I'm not following your question.
Well, like recently, a kid complained to me, I believe it was someplace on Hancock Street, that they had about 10 or 15 people barge into the building. I
don't think we have that many
We don't-
people.
We don't barge into
No.
any buildings. We have appointments. We meet the owners there.
Yep.
It's very organized.
Yeah, I don't know why you would say that.
Well, I don't either, and I'd like to know who that was, and if you want, I'll get back to them.
Yeah, sometimes we
I'm
find
not going
places
to
in...
tell them now, because I'm sure it won't pass the inspection.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if we were going to go far afield of these inspections, but we find deplorable conditions sometimes that children are living in, and so the health department would go, the fire
Sure.
department would go, ISD would go, legal would go, and we'd make sure that the children are placed properly and the house is made habitable for the people that live there.
Frank, that's no direct reflection on you. I'm just
Well,
telling you,
no,
I just had a complaint that was on Facebook the other day directed to
I
me.
try not to read Facebook and those
All
kind
right.
of comments, but we've been attacked up here that we barge into properties. It's been
Yep.
said on more than one occasion, and I want to clear the air
Well,
right
I've been a
now.
victim of
We
one of them, so
don't.
I've seen it
Well, you might
happen.
be the only one then.
That I probably was the only one in
Probably are
that,
the only one,
but I thought
because I
there'd
don't
be,
get the complaints.
okay, as long as you don't get them, I get them. That's all. I'm taking a direct shot at you, Frank, I'm just telling you
Well,
what I
how
hear.
can I not take it that
Usually if
way?
we get a
It
complaint,
wasn't directed at you, I'm just asking a
Well, I'm
question.
sitting here to answer questions, and you're
Well,
saying
could
we're
be- it
storming
could be
into
a-
places, and we're not.
Well, I've never had you,
Counselor,
I've
again,
never had you
Counselor.
go and give an
So
inspection, I've
please
had other
stop
people.
saying that.
Counselor.
Thank you.
sure.
Any more questions for our guest? Counselor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did think of one real quick. For a lot of folks, a three-family house might be their source of income.
Yep.
And say there's some things that need to be corrected, and financially, it's going to be a burden for them. I know that the city has a fund that if you qualify, you can get repair work done. Would this be something that would qualify under that as well?
Sure, I mean, it's an income-based fund.
Right.
You'd go to planning, and they have several programs where you can use the money gained as a no-interest loan for 15 years. It's a balloon loan, and there'd be no payments due for 15 years if that's the way you chose to go about it. And those funds would be subject to just pulling a permit, getting plans, and then having invoices submitted. And any money that's drawn from any one of those funds would go directly to the maintenance and care of that home, and they'd be due on a balloon basis.
Okay. And this might be out of your jurisdiction, but you might be familiar with it. I know at one point in time, the city used to do these assistance with the homeowner, where you'd put the lien on the property before you sold it or anything of that nature, you'd need to take care of it. Do we have any of that going on? Has that been phased out in
Well-
favor of a shorter type of timeframe?
We've had instances where, under the building code, we're allowed, the building commissioner is allowed to remediate a danger. So things I can think of are retaining walls, in which this really doesn't have to do with the building, but it's used to, if someone's property is like an in-ground pool, and it's like on Maplewood Street, there was an in-ground pool that was invading into it was collapsing and invading into someone else's property, and the city would do that. Or we'd fill in a pool, 66 Wilbur Street, we filled in a pool. But I could see, yeah, as a matter of fact, we've shored up second-story porches. So things like that, sure. And then,
On the city's expense?
yeah, well, if we come upon a porch where the second story's fallen down, and we've got to go fix it.
So if a homeowner doesn't have the funds and the city has to do that, is there a lien put on the house for the value of the work that was done?
Yep, sometimes it's an automatic lien.
Okay.
But otherwise, sometimes we had to demolish 15 Morris after the fire.
Yep.
Because it was a hazard to the other buildings around it, and we just put an actual straight lien with the Registry of Deeds on that.
In what kind of term are we looking at in terms of trying to get the lien satisfied if something like that were to happen?
We don't,
Okay, so
We
it's
don't
not something
concern
you're
ourselves.
aggressively going after the owner?
No.
But at some point in time, it's going to catch up?
no, if we
Yeah.
we don't foreclose on anyone because we had to shore up their porch or anything like that. That
Okay.
just will sit in perpetuity until the
Someone's going to
building's-
sell, or they need to do something?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Refinance.
Because that was the only other concern I could think of, is that if someone was financially strapped, how would they go about complying? So, all right, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Counselor Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. President. In-law apartments, that's been talked about in this discussion. Are they legal in-law apartment? How does that work?
There are legal in-law apartments. They're considered units, but as long as they're code compliant, sure, you can have a legal in-law. It's basement apartments without egress that we're concerned about. If it's an in-law apartment that's been constructed under the code, then usually it's safe. And
But a basement apartment in-law apartments are usually in the basement.
yeah, and they can be legal. There's basement apartments that are legal all over the city. They have two ways of egress, and
I read about a year ago, I think it was the city of Somerville that was trying to promote in-law apartments to keep senior citizens in their home with their family, rather than a nursing home type of situation. And I was wondering if you knew anything about that program. Have you ever heard of that?
I've read a few things. So what they do, just so you know, in a place where you'd estimate that one of the basement apartments would be illegal here, it's really mainly because there's only one way in and out. So if the fire's there, you can't do
You
that.
gotta have two entrance, exit and an entrance.
You know how those
Two
garden,
egress.
you know how those garden windows exist that I could never get out of?
Well, that
Council
makes two of
Matusky, I'm
us.
sure you could, but I couldn't.
No, I don't think I could either, but,
You'd end up getting one of those windows dug out
oh, I see.
and replaced where you can actually get out of that side of the building, and that's your second means of egress, if there isn't another one, making it compliant. Things like that. Those are the innovative things people are doing to try to make those basement
And they
units.
offer a 10-year commitment that the elderly, well, hopefully would live that long. But I think it's a program that, Everett should consider, because if you could look into that, Counselor, I believe it was Somerville, it was a program to allow senior citizens to stay in their home, and a family member would live there, and the rent, of course, is cheaper in an in-law apartment, but, and they get to stay in their own home, and they have some independence, rather than go to a nursing home or assisted living, which is outrageous, well, that's what they cost today, I guess, but to keep somebody in their home. And I was just curious how many in-law apartments there was in the city, but you probably don't know that.
I wouldn't
but-
know that number.
But years ago, that was a popular, it's definitely popular outside of Everett, but you hear that all the time from friends of mine. My mother-in-law moved in downstairs and this type of deal. But I'm in favor of that program if we could start, if you could look into that.
I will.
Thank you.
Counselor Marchese.
On Council Matusky's, if you have an in-law, does the house have to be changed to a two-family?
It does not.
Does not. If you have a second egress, usually one, you would go through, say, a basement, so it would go through a garage and come out. And the second egress came upstairs to the property, would that be legal?
No. You'd have to
So
have
that
two.
wouldn't be an in-law apartment, that'd be a
Right.
separate apartment.
Well, so there is I'd have to come back and report to the definition of an in-law
Yeah.
apartment, but generally, it's also considered a shared unit still, because it's family members.
If it's
In-law
sha- if
denotes
it-
that you're
So it would be a
related.
shared unit, but they wouldn't need two egresses out of the basement. The second egress would come up to the kitchen.
And
That's a
an
little
in-law-
touchy subject. That's where the in-law
I'd have
and
to
the
check on that.
two-family becomes
I'd have
into
to,
play.
I'd have to check on that. It
I've
depends
been
on,
involved in similar situations like
Yeah.
that, and I've always been told, especially by the fire department, that you need two egresses out of the basement. You can't count on that second egress being the one that you go up the cellar stairs and out the door
Well, that's why I'm trying to
upstairs.
get the apartment and the in-law thing. So if you have your mother, father, you actually have to,
You can have family members living in conjunction with the rest of the house
Right.
in the basement,
exactly.
you know, but,
But you can't have an oven down there, right?
right, you're not supposed to have an oven.
that's a,
I thank you.
okay, sure.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for our guest? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the council.
Counsel, what are you doing?
On the
We got
piece,
these.
I would make a motion that we refer it out to the body to accept the minutes and place on file.
Seconded, all in favor?
All right,
All opposed? The ayes have it.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? All in favor?
All right.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.